Okay, year 10. So I did this on the board the other day, and this is stuff that you have done before. So let's refresh it, make sure it's clear. I picked a couple that are not standard, just solve this. First of all, we need to expand the brackets. And so I get x squared plus 12x equals 64. And of course, we need to move the 64 to the other side and equals 0. Now I have a quadratic in a standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c, and I can solve it. Now, when there's a number, when it's called a monoquadratic, a number 1 in front of the x squared, of course this is our easiest to do. AC is negative 64, 1 times negative 64, and B is 12. Factors of negative 64 that add to give 12. Okay, so I've got to think that through, and I know, okay, 64 is 8 times 8. That doesn't work, does it? No. 4 times what? So let's go 4 times, that's a 1 and a 6. Oh, okay, that's cool because it's negative. I know the difference has to be 12. So if I make that minus 4 times 16, I get negative 64, and minus 4 plus 16 is 12. When it's a monoquadratic, the easiest whatsoever to do, x times x is x squared, and I'm going to use the minus 4 plus 16. The question said to solve, so therefore either x minus 4 is 0 or x plus 16 equals 0. So there's two solutions. So therefore x minus 4 equals 0, x equals 4, and x plus 16 equals 0. So x will equal negative 16. So when it's a monoquadratic, it's actually a fairly simple task. When it has a value of a, it makes it a little bit harder. It's not too hard. And we're going to try and find our solutions. If we can find factors, it makes it easy. If not, we go to a quadratic formula, which is still easy. It's just a bit more fiddly. So 6x squared minus 23x plus 15 equals 0. Always look for a common factor to simplify it. Unfortunately, in this case, we don't have a common factor, and so we need to work out 6 times 15 is 90, and B is negative 23. So factors of 90 to add to give negative 23. Well, of course, 9 times 10 doesn't add to give 23, so that's no good. We're going to need two negatives. 15 times 6, and if they're both negative, I end up with negative 15 minus 6, which is negative 21. That doesn't work, so, and this is the thing, you just do trial and error until we actually find the right one. Next one I look at, well, I know 5 goes into 90. 5 times 18 is 90. Oh, that's pretty cool. Negative 5 plus negative 18 is negative 23. So they're the factors that we want to use. So this is where it comes a little bit different. And as I always say, I learnt this somewhere else. It is a method that always works, and it'll save you time if you can just get used to using this. 6x times 6x unfortunately gives you 36x squared, so I need to divide by 6 to make that accurate. Using the minus 5 and minus 18, just like we did with the monoquadratic, I'm filling it in. And now I look to say, hey, does that 6 cancel into either of them or part of that? Well, 6 goes into 6 once and into 18 3. So in actual fact, I have 6x, so 0 equals 6x minus 5 and x minus 3. Therefore, 6x minus 5 equals 0, 6x equals 5, x equals 5, 6, and x minus 3 equals 0, x equals 3. And they're my two solutions. Now, this next section is about word problems, but they're actually not that difficult. So, for example, in question 6, it looks like there's lots of different things in it, but we're actually given a whole lot of values. So we just need to look at it and read the question, not worry about it or freak out about it. We're told that L has a value, W has a value, M has a value. So instead of being all upset about it or go, oh, I can't do that, just put in the values and see what happens. 288 is M equals W, which is 16, times L, which is 13, over 2 times X, minus W, which is 16, on 2 X squared. So you might have thought, oh, that looked terrible, looked ugly. Well, 16 divided by 2 is 8. 8 times 13 is 104. And 16 on 2 is minus 8x squared. Take everything to one side. 8x squared minus 104x plus 288 equals 0. I have a quadratic. I need to solve. Now you could try and solve it from this, but as I always say, look for a common factor. Now I'll do it in stages because you may not see it straight away each time, but I can see 4 as a factor. So if I divide everything by 4, I get 2x squared minus 4 into 10 goes 2, carry the 2, 4 into 24 goes 6, 26x, and now 4 into 28 goes 7, 4 into 8 goes 2. I can see they're all even, so I can divide it again. It doesn't matter if you don't see it in one step. They're actually divisible by 8, but we still got there. And now that I've simplified that far, we now have something called a monoquadratic, which means that it becomes very easy. AC is 36, B is negative 13. The fact that we have a positive AC and a negative 13, both factors need to be negative. Now I know negative 9 times 4 is negative 36, is positive 36, and negative 9 minus 4 is minus 13. The clue to tell me to do that and not 6 times 6 is because I wanted a negative b value. So I thought negative times odd times an even will give me an odd answer. So now using that, I'm simply going to use my two brackets equals 0, and I get x minus 9, x minus 4. Therefore, x minus 9 equals 0, and x equals 9, and x minus 4 equals 0. So x equals 4 when you take the 4 to the other side. So these word questions aren't questions to be worried about. Now the other question I've chosen to show you is question 11. And this is an example where you're given a question and it talks about a shape. Don't just think about it, draw the shape. It says the altitude of the triangle is 1 meter shorter than the base. Well, it's talking about the height of the triangle and it's talking about the base. And it says the altitude is 1 unit shorter. Now, your diagram doesn't have to be completely accurate. I've tried to make the altitude a bit shorter than the base, but that really doesn't matter. So if I called the altitude or the height x, then that means that the base will be x plus 1. I've chosen to use that so it's a positive. Now we're told that the area equals 15 centimeters squared. So using my diagram, I can see what I'm doing. I can get a picture of it. And it says calculate the altitude. So I'm trying to find x. Okay. Well, area of a triangle, we're assuming that you're big people now and you can know some area formulas. You can always look them up in Google, but it is a half base times height. So a half, the base is x plus 1 and the height is x. So I get a half times x squared plus x, which is a half x squared plus 1/2 x. and we're told that that equals 15. So 15, 15, take the 15 to the other side, and I get 0 equals a half x squared plus a half x minus 15. A nice trick to know and to use is to say, okay, I don't want to have the halves. I'm going to multiply everything by 2. 0 times 2 is 2. 2 times a half is x squared. 2 times a half is x. 2 times minus 15 is 30. Oh, look, there's a mono as well. Mono quadratic should be fairly easy. Sorry, we had to go to the other side. AC is negative 30. B is 1. Factors of 30 that add to give 1. 1 being negative, 1 being positive, because 30 is negative, 1's positive. Well, 6 times 5, the difference between them is 1. We want it to be a positive 1, so I'll make the 5 negative. So 6 minus 5 equals 1. So 0 equals x plus 6, x minus 5. Therefore, x plus 6 equals 0, x equals negative 6, x minus 5 equals 0, x equals 5. Okay, enjoy this exercise. It's a bit of fun. Bye-bye.